Hello and welcome to this induction video for the DJI Ronin S gimbal kit. Once you've watched this video and completed the questionnaire that follows, you'll have full access to the kit. But we recommend that the first time you book it out, you watch the video again to make sure you're fully aware of how to operate it safely. The DJI Ronin S is a small motorised 3-axis gimbal with a maximum payload of up to 3.6 kilograms. Of the cameras we stock in media services, this includes the Canon M50, the 800 and 850D, the 7 and 5D, the EOS R, the Legria and the PowerShot, and also the Sony FS5 with a slight modification to the camera. If you plan on doing that, then please speak to someone in media services and they will help you. Included in the kit is the gimbal head with the attached handle, which is also the battery. The extension grip and tripod. The base plate with a 1/4-inch screw. A USB plug with a USB-C cable for charging. And an accessories box. Inside the accessories box, you'll find a small riser plate for smaller cameras to lift them higher and get them balanced. A lens support and a screw which attach to the front of the base plate. An additional 1/4-inch screw for attaching the riser plate to the base plate. And also 3 cables for connecting different cameras directly to the gimbal. Not all cameras will have the same functionality. Some cameras you'll be able to start and stop recording using the button on the gimbal, and others you may be able to use the follow focus to focus manually. Unfortunately, of the cameras we stock in media services, none of them can connect directly to the follow focus, but we will soon be including a focus motor in the kit. The first thing you're going to need to do is get your camera ready to attach to the gimbal. Take off any straps, lens caps, and also make sure you've got your battery and media already installed. And also attach the lens that you are planning on using so that you have the correct weight for balancing the gimbal. If the camera has an articulated screen, make sure you get that in the position that's going to be useful for you now so that it doesn't affect the balance when you change it later. So for cameras of this size and smaller, you're going to want to attach the riser plate first to the bottom of the camera. Make sure you tighten the screw so it's not going to twist at all. Once you've done that, attach the base plate using both the 1/4-inch screws. When attaching the base plate, make sure the small white arrow on the top of the plate is facing forward. When tightening the plate in place, make sure you have the middle of the plate roughly around the centre of weight of the camera and lens. You'll need to slide it further forward for a larger lens and move it back if you have a smaller lens attached. Again, make sure you tighten the screws. If required, attach the lens support to the front of the base plate. Hold the camera upside down to do this, to make sure it sits in the right place. Return any of the accessories you're not using to the box so that they don't get lost. In this kit, the battery comes ready connected to the gimbal head. To disconnect, use this silver lever on the left-hand side. Pull the lever backwards and slide the battery out from the back. To reattach, slide it forward and push the lever forward as far as it goes until it's locked in place. Next, connect the grip extension and tripod. This is done using the 1/4-inch screw on the base of the battery. Make sure it's nice and tight so it's not going to become loose when you're operating it. Open the 3 tripod legs and place on a flat surface, ready to attach the camera and to balance. Remove the Velcro strap, which is holding the different parts of the gimbal head together, and again, put that back in the box so that you don't lose it. You'll notice that on the front of the camera sled, there is again a white arrow which shows you which direction it should be facing. When looking at the gimbal from behind, you should see the joystick and the mode button and record button with the follow focus wheel on the left-hand side. This motor should be facing backwards, and the other motor should be on the right-hand side of where you're going to place the camera. You may find you need to move the camera sled in or out to accommodate the size of your camera. You can do this by loosening the silver screw on the back of the sled and then sliding it to the left for a larger camera, moving it back in to the right for a smaller camera, and then locking it in place using the silver screw again. The camera attaches to the base plate from the front, sliding backwards. You'll hear it click into place, and then you can lock it using this silver lever on the left-hand side. Push the lever all the way forward so that the camera cannot slide backwards or forwards. To remove, pull the lever all the way back and use the quick release button under the right-hand side of the camera and slide it off from the front. When you first connect the camera, hold the motor on the right-hand side because the gimbal will become heavier on this side and may slip and hit against itself. So keep a good firm hold of that, and then move the camera until it sits nice and level from front to back in the sled. Once you have it nice and level, push the lever forward to lock it in place. So although the camera is now attached, it's still not balanced, and you can see that the weight is not in the center. The gimbal is made up of 3 different motors. You have the pan motor on the bottom attaching to the handle. You have the tilt motor on the side, and you have the roll, which is this one on the back. Our aim is to get the camera perfectly balanced in the center of all 3 of those axes. You'll know it's in the right place when you place the camera in any position. It should stay where you put it and not drop down or spin upside down. Firstly, we're going to balance the roll motor on the back of the gimbal. This is so that the camera can sit nice and level without dropping to the left here, as you can see it's doing at the moment. Unscrew the silver lever on the top of the slide, and then you're going to have to take the weight of the camera by grabbing hold of the bar on the right hand side and twisting it slightly so that it can move freely through the slide. You'll find that if you try and pull it without twisting, the weight of the camera causes torsion in the slide and it won't move smoothly. As you make adjustments to the 3 different axes, you might find you need to return back to one that you've already balanced before, just to fine tune it later. So now you can see it sits nice and level. So now that we've done the roll axes on the back, we're going to adjust the tilt axes and try and get that balanced centrally from top to bottom. Hold the camera underneath and loosen the screw on the right hand side, and then slide the camera up and lock the screw in place again to test whether it is in the right place. Tilt the camera up to about 45 degrees and let go. You may find you need to move back to the slide on the sled itself and move the camera slightly to rebalance it so it's centrally balanced. And remember, always lock everything back into place when you've finished adjusting. So you can see when it's in the right place, as I tilt it, it stays where I place it. And now if I tilt it forward, again, it stays exactly where I place the camera. So once you've done that, just double check that the roll is still in the right place. So that's the one at the back here. Okay, so to adjust the third axis, the pan axis, we have to do something a little bit different. So you need to pick the gimbal up, you can close the tripod and tilt it forward to about a 45-degree angle. And then on the pan axis, tilt it again, about 45 degrees, and let go. And again, you want it to stay exactly where it's placed. So at the moment, you can see that it is slightly front heavy as it drops back into with the camera facing forward. If it was back heavy, it would drop around the other way like that. So as it's front heavy, we need to slide it backwards in the slide. So place it back on the table and unscrew the screw on the right hand side of this slide here at the bottom and move it backwards. Again, lift it up, tilt it forward and try it again until it stays exactly where you place it. So now that we've balanced the camera in the gimbal, we can go ahead and switch it on. Firstly, you're going to want to switch the battery on itself, and this can be done using the small button on the left-hand side at the bottom of the handle. Press the button once to switch it on, and to switch it back off, tap once and then hold until all four lights go out. Once you've turned the handle on, you can go ahead and switch the head on itself using the button on the right-hand side of the joystick. You need to press and hold until all three lights light up. You'll hear the gimbal make a beep and then it will automatically self-right itself. The first time you switch it on after you've attached a new camera, especially a larger camera, you may find that the gimbal moves on its own, and that's because although you've balanced it, you need to calibrate the motors to make sure it's perfectly ready to work with the camera that you have attached. On the back of the gimbal here, you'll see there's 3 different lights. Only one of them should be lit up at a time. You have 1, 2, 3. That's for 3 different modes, and you can adjust each of those modes and customize them using the DJI Ronin app. You then have a joystick, and under that you have 2 buttons, one which says M and one which is a red record button. Now this will only work if you have a compatible camera directly attached to the gimbal. If I press the M button for mode, I can cycle through the 3 different modes. To calibrate the motor, press the M button and the trigger on the front of the gimbal. Press and hold until the green light starts to flash. The gimbal will then go through a calibration process and you'll hear each different motor calibrating separately. Leave the gimbal flat on the table until it finishes and the light goes solid green again. Once that's done, the camera should stay perfectly stable and not be moving under its own weight. If this isn't the case, it means you may have balanced the gimbal slightly wrong and you'll need to switch it all back off again and rebalance before trying again. Remember, when you're making any adjustments, make sure that the gimbal's switched off so that the motors aren't working against the changes that you're making. If you do want to make any changes to the camera or remove the camera from the gimbal, again, make sure you switch it off before you do so. But now that it's ready, you can see that the gimbal is doing its job and is keeping the camera nice and stable when I'm making movements. You can calibrate all of the different settings for each of the 3 modes using the app. You can change the sensitivity of the joystick so that it can move faster or slower when you make adjustments using the joystick, using the tilt or pan. And also you can set the gimbal up to automatically pan or tilt with you as you turn. And again, you can adjust the sensitivity of this through the app, or you can switch it off altogether. Just a small tip, if you're moving forwards or backwards using the gimbal, if you tilt it forward slightly, this will help take out some of the bounce of your steps, whereas if you have it completely vertical, you might notice that it bounces up and down a little bit as you move forward and backwards. So just tilt it just under 45 degrees, and then the motor on the side will compensate for the bounce of your steps. One thing to be aware of when operating the gimbal is the points where it could come into contact with itself and cause damage if you're not being careful with it. So you can see that on the right hand side, it's possible for the gimbal to hit against this screw here. So just be aware that you don't make any movement where it's going to be too extreme and cause the gimbal to hit against itself. Not only will it spoil your shot, but it could also damage the gimbal as well. The trigger on the front of the gimbal can do several things. If I tap the trigger twice, it returns it to its center start position. If I tap it 3 times, it turns it round into selfie mode. And again, tap it twice again, will turn it back into normal mode. If I hold down the trigger, it disengages any of the automatic panning and tilting on that mode. So you can see at the moment, as I pan and tilt, the camera turns with me. However, if I hold down the trigger, it locks it in the position that it's facing, and it's not going to turn at all until I release the trigger. If you do find that the gimbal starts to become unbalanced and spin, then double tap that button just to try and get it back into the center position. If that doesn't work, switch the gimbal off, place it on a table, and just double check your balance to make sure it is perfect. To operate the gimbal in underslung mode, move the handle in a clockwise motion around the left open side of the camera. And to switch it back, move in a counterclockwise direction around the same side of the camera. When you're done, place the gimbal back down on the table, and to switch off, press and hold the power button on the side of the gimbal until all 3 of the lights go out, and then you'll notice that it is free moving again and the motors are inactive. So that's how to set up and operate the gimbal safely. Now, when you're dismantling it to put back in the case, just remember, when you remove the camera, this side is going to become heavier and will potentially drop down and hit against the side here. So make sure when you remove the camera, just keep hold of the gimbal and then let it down slowly and readjust it so it will fit back into the case nicely. Remember to remove any of the accessories which you've attached to the camera, including the base plate, lens support, and place them back in the box before you return it. The gimbal can be charged using the USB-C cable provided via the port on this front side of the gimbal under this rubber flap. So that's the end of this induction video for the DJI Ronin. If you have any further questions, please come into Media Services and we'll try and answer those for you. Once you've finished watching this video, please go and complete the questionnaire to complete your training. Once you've done that, you'll be able to book the gimbal yourself and practice with it before you do your shoot. Thank you for watching.